All right, hello and welcome back to another Board Crazy review. I am D, joined as ever by my underlings.
I'm Graham.
And I am co-Crusader champion.
No, let's not. Okay. Today we're reviewing Crusaders, Thy Will Be Done by Seth, Jaffee. If you've ever watched one of our reviews, you know that at this point we will be airing my introduction to the game from our gameplay video. That's going to be rolling now. You can skip to the time provided if you don't want to watch that. But here it goes.
Wait, hold on. I thought you were Teutonic Will.
Oh, I am Teutonic Will. I'm co-Crusader champion Teutonic Will.
Okay, that makes sense. I didn't need to clear that up. Anyway.
Crusaders, Thy Will Be Done is a game for 2 to 4 players designed by Seth Jaffee and published by Tasty Minstrel Games. In this game, each player is the Grand Master of an order of holy knights with the goal of trying to spread the most influence as they travel across the continent. To set up, each player takes a player board, their various tokens, and the 6 action wedge tiles of their chosen color. One player will take their 6 action wedge tiles and arrange them in a random order. When this is done, the other players will follow suit, arranging theirs identically. Then each player will place 2 of their action tokens on each of the 6 wedges. Each player will also be dealt 2 knight tiles and choose one of them to keep. Each of these tiles will alter either the setup, the gameplay, or both. The board is set up with the enemy and building tokens placed randomly on the indicated hexes. Then each player in reverse player order will place their starting knight on one of the 4 starting hexes. Also, a set sum of influence tokens, depending on the player count, is set up next to the board at the start of the game. The game is played with players taking turns in clockwise order. On their turn, a player may do one of 2 things. They may either perform an action from one of their 6 wedges, or they may choose to upgrade one of their 6 wedges. There are 5 possible actions that a player may take, and we'll go into those in greater detail as we play the game. To resolve an action, a player simply chooses the wedge with the action they wish to perform, and the number of action tokens present on that wedge determines how strong it will be, or in certain cases, if it is strong enough to be performed. Once this is done, the player will collect all of the action tokens from that wedge, and then distribute them one at a time in clockwise order to the other wedges, starting with the one next in clockwise order. Upgrading a wedge simply involves flipping over a wedge tile of your choice. Upgraded wedges have 2 actions on them instead of 1, and action tokens may be split between these 2 actions on a player's turn. The end of the game is triggered once the predetermined supply of influence has been emptied. At this point, the round is finished with players who have yet to take their turns going, and players may continue to collect additional influence at this point. Once the game is over, players can earn additional influence by having defeated the most of certain types of enemies and by completing any of their level 4 buildings. This additional influence is added to what they gathered throughout the rest of the game, and the player who has spread the most is declared the winner. Okay, so hopefully that gives you a basic idea of how the game is played if you're just watching this for review. We're not going to spend this video discussing the score, alright guys? What happened.
Yeah.
It didn't happen well, but it happened.
If you decide to skip his intro.
Oh, okay.
Basic synopsis of this game is you're playing as a team of Crusaders in order. We all select an order of knights.
Go team.
You move around the board.
Yeah, look at them.
6 different actions. These showing off all the colors. And you use those actions to spread your influence and then collect influence tokens, which are victory points. And the person at the end of the game with the most victory points wins.
Or ties.
Or ties.
If you tie, you
share
can
victory.
tie. You can share victory.
Okay, so I feel like we should start this review as we always do, talking about gameplay.
Yes.
You cannot talk about Crusaders.
Thy Will Be Done.
You can't talk about this game without talking about its Mancala rondel mechanic.
Well, yeah. No, you're right.
Wherein you have 6 triangular tiles that you put in an arrangement.
Wedges.
Yes, wedges.
Wedges.
In an arrangement of a circle.
Mm-hmm.
And you select actions, redistribute those action tokens so that it's hard to do the same action twice in a row.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes the game, in essence, play, I guess you could, one thing it really does well, that mechanic, is it makes this game play quickly. You would think that a game where you're trying to, move around the world and not really conquer, but spread influence and crusade, you'd think there'd be a lot of combat, that this would be like a 3-hour game, but it plays in 60 to 80 minutes. I feel like it's a fair range, and a part of that's because it's not really hard to know what action to take when you can see, what's available to you on a rondel, circle. And that I think is one of the biggest bonuses to this game. It's real tight, is what I'm trying to say. The mechanics, it's tight. You could even say it's elegant, and I just love that it keeps it moves.
Okay, sure. Yeah, I agree that the game play time is pretty good. I agree that the Mancala rondel sort of aspects of the gameplay are its strongest features. It's no surprise that Mancala is one of mankind's most enduring games. It's a solid mechanic and it still works. And yeah, I agree. It's really satisfying. It really makes you think ahead.
Yeah.
You really have to strategize. Like, okay, think more than one turn ahead. Like, how I'm going to move these action tokens to maximize like what I can do. Because early in the game, you could do a thing where I've got 6 action tokens on one wedge, but that's not really going to be helpful because what you do early isn't going to require 6. That probably only need like 3 or 4. So it's this gradual process of carefully moving everything around.
It's interesting because I found it almost too, and I really do love that mechanic, but I just found I used it differently, I guess, in the sense that I didn't see it as a need to. You can strategize out very far in advance. Think, okay, I'm going to do this turn, then I'll have this here and here and here. But what I found is, for me personally, that was a little bit overwhelming, but it still allowed me to strategize, but more in an immediate need. I would just kind of take it as it went.
The flow of
it. Oh, okay. I need this here now. I'm going to use this, and then I realize, oh, you know what? I have this really stacked up, and I would try to work my turn around that, just kind of whatever fell in place.
I can understand, and I guess it could be a strength of the game that you could play it that way. You don't have to worry necessarily about.
Yeah. So there's a wide variety of how you can strategize around strategize your board around that. You can either focus, plan out very far ahead. If I'm going to do this move, followed by this move, followed by this move, and you can plan, you can count it out and know exactly where it's going to end up. The only possible scenario is that someone takes your move, kind of, in a sense. That's very even hard to happen in this game, but it could happen. So you do have a lot of flexibility, I think, with that, the mechanic there. Yeah. And the only thing that helps, and the things that helps that are the knights and their special powers that can kind of manipulate your board a little bit to change it. And
I agree. The knights add a nice bit of asymmetry that the game needs, I think, to keep it from being a little stale.
And like what Graham said, we'll go back to the player interaction thing later about stealing other people's moves. But the knight order tiles really augment. For instance, mine, I used a nice Teutonic, and it allowed me to either go clockwise or counterclockwise. I'm stupid.
It's regressing as a human being.
That for instance completely changes. Well, not completely changes, but definitely allows for different play styles. So I really like the Knight Order tiles, and I think the fact that you get 2 at the beginning of the game and you can choose from them. Allows you to be like, oh well, I've had this one before, I'll choose the other one, or you can just choose the one you like, and they also give you a good variety of them.
It's a solid amount.
Another point I want to make about the rondel mechanic is, even if you get to a point where you don't like how your action tokens are set up on your wheel, I love that they give you the option to upgrade, where you can flip one of them, which makes it better. It goes from being a single action to 2 different actions that you can take on that one section. And you can now redistribute any action tokens from any tile and move them around.
Yep.
So it's a chance for you to be like, maybe this turn won't be so useful in the moment, but it'll allow me to set up further turns down the road to go the way I want them to, which reduces frustration and increases satisfaction. So that was also a really savvy decision.
Yeah, definitely. It's a good mechanic. Not just to help the players play the game, but also again it adds a bit of asymmetry to the proceedings, where not everyone's going to have the exact same setup after upgrading has happened.
Right.
And there are even, there are variants even in the rule book, I think they provide where, once you've gotten familiar with the game, you can just sort of, everyone has their own setup of their wedges as they like or randomly or something. And, I think the game offers a lot of ways to keep things fresh.
Well, let's go into a different element of the gameplay.
Well,
and that is scoring points.
Oh, okay.
I think we should talk about that. So we've talked about how you play the game. This is why you play the game, or how you win, is you collect these. We have them in the bags here. These are influence tokens, and based on the player count, there's a certain amount that are placed beside the board, and you're just gonna be grabbing them throughout the game, and that once they're gone, and then you count them up. Person who has the most wins. And I think this game, more than any other game that we've ever played, reminds me of why the point salad, as it's called, like the point salad mechanic or whatever, can kind of be troublesome. Point salad means that you're just scoring constantly. Almost every action you do in this game, every action you do in this game will score you points.
No.
Except for upgrading.
Traveling
doesn't.
Traveling. Okay, so fine, but
some
75% of the actions you take in this game will score you points, whether it's building, crusading, or just outright taking an influence action, mustering more troops. Regardless, it scores you a lot of points, but the problem is that we already established this game moves quick. And when you combine like fast-moving turns with a lot of point scoring, it can lead to an issue where, now this is probably on the individual group and players, not so much the game, but it can lead to issues where you either forget to take a point or two, or you forget to, if you're crusading, for instance, you can forget to reduce the power, or increase the power, I guess you could say, of an enemy, because there's like a little tracker on the side of the board. And things like that, in an average session, that won't bother a lot of people. They'll just play their game. If they miss something, so be it. They still count up their score, and whoever won.
Might not even notice.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But some people might just ignore it or not even notice it. But for people who care about that kind of stuff, it's something you should know about with this game, is that you have to be zeroed in to make sure everyone gets their points.
You're right. You do have to pay attention for sure and be familiar with the mechanics. Like this little cheat thing you get, tells you how you earn victory points. As you do your actions, and it's not terrible or anything, but it's not the most in your face reminder that you should be collecting points when you.
I don't know if I looked at that even once.
Exactly. So I don't know if having just doing a points track around the board would have been maybe just a better solution to just constantly remind you hey, do your score or something like that instead of this, but.
It's just something to keep in mind.
Yeah, I guess it's a designer decision that want to keep a bit of mystery as far as how your opponents are doing compared to yourself. So you don't constantly aware of exactly what the score is.
I think it's one of those things that just is in this game, and you have to be aware of it. And if you don't like that about a game, well, then you might not like this game.
If all of your friends are absent-minded, then maybe this isn't. Or you'll win a lot because you'll be the only one collecting points in the entire game.
Yeah.
But.
One thing I really liked about this game, and I thought it did well, is the scaling of the points throughout the game. So, when it starts with the buildings, you're only getting a couple, and I thought it scaled very nicely. Same thing with you fighting the what are they actually called? The enemies. I don't know,
Slavs,
yeah,
Saracens,
and how those go up. I think everything was balanced very nicely and scaled very nicely as the game went on for the time period that we played in.
Yeah.
This is a game that, if it were any longer, it would start to get very hectic, I think, with all the points you're scoring. And so because when you first look at it, it almost goes into the point that there's a lot here. They throw, I think, 200 some points down the side of the board, and you're like,
it's a three-player game. It's 200.
200 points.
Yeah.
Once you get to 200 points, that's over. But you think about it, you're like, geez, 200 points, that's a lot.
I've got 5.
And all of a sudden you start going, you're like, this is taking forever. We're never going to get there. And then you hit a turn, boom. It's like, okay, now we're all.
Oh, I can't go again.
Yeah, so it picks up quickly, but I also think it scaled very nicely throughout the game. I didn't feel like it was. Like I said, there was a point where I'm a little concerned this is going to take a while, but it didn't. It wrapped up very, very nicely, and I was pleased with that balance between between the points and progression of the game.
Now there is a point, going back to the gameplay a little bit, there is a point that I do wish to make about it, which is as much as I enjoy the stuff that happens on the player board, like I think everything on the player board is great, I think what actually happens on the board is kind of not very interesting, unfortunately. Because you're not going to have situations where a player like, oh, maybe I can do this wedge, but I'm not sure. It's like the rule book says you have to exceed a certain point to do something, but you're always going to have the points you need to do something. Like you're going to have a plan for that. So you're going to do something, it's going to happen on the board, it's going to be done. That's it. There's basically no player interaction. There's no way to like prevent someone from doing something because you're not technically opponents, right? You're not enemies. The enemies are on the board.
Right.
So I just feel like, it's just a constant kind of like, there are situations where a player may take your action, and that's pretty much the extent of player interaction. Like it's like it looks and kind of feels like a dudes on a map game.
Yeah.
It doesn't play like one at all. And there's fights, right, with enemies, but again, it's just like, okay, I'm strong enough, I win. I just feel like it's all a little underwhelming. Like everything just kind of happens.
I agree. It lacks excitement when you think there should be some. And I think a lot of that falls to the theme. It's called Crusaders, right? So you think, oh man, like I'm gonna be,
Preaching Jesus.
yeah, when heading east and battling and doing what needs to be done to, spread the gospel. Look, we don't want to get into that kind of territory. My point is that it sort of implies that the game's going to be like moving and active and exciting, and there's going to be opportunities to mess with your opponents, and it's sort of a race. It's a race to the finish line, but you think more is going to happen.
Yeah.
And it is a lot of fun trying to organize your board and get those action tokens where you want them so you can do your thing. That's fun because it's like a puzzle. But you're right, when you actually take the time to now execute your actions on the board. It doesn't feel like you're doing that much. I mean, even like crusading, which is like you would think is battle. You're not doing it against someone. You're doing it against
I think you have to
a token.
Really pay attention to the name of this game because it might be misleading. This is not a game about the Crusades.
No.
This is a game about people who fought in the Crusades at some point. This is about the Crusaders, but this is not about them going to the Middle East and fighting holy wars. This is about them trying to spread their own influence throughout Europe.
Yeah, which is something else they did.
Yes, sure, but again, this is not about like the Crusades. This is not like, like what I think people would think of when they hear about a game about the Crusades.
It almost should be called like Templar, Thy Will Be Done,
something a little bit less inflammatory, sort of.
And that's the thing that's what I'm saying is like the name and the theme. I feel like when you see it and you see the components and you see the night orders, you might start to get an idea of how the gameplay will tell a story in your head. And that's what happened with me. I was like, I'm gonna have this cool story where I head east and I like mess with my opponents a little bit, and I'm trying to take away. Like I almost thought maybe it would be cool if you could, I don't know, take away other people's influence. I don't know, but I thought it would at least be somewhat interactive and somewhat exciting, and I had this cool story in my head, and it just didn't play out that way, and it's just
That's another thing. There. Like it's kind of similar to like I don't see it, but Fallout we played recently, where this is a game where you're ostensibly working for the same side, right? Or you can be. Like the whole like idea as put in the rule book here is that you're just trying to spread influence, and then at a certain point the king doesn't like how powerful you're getting and he cuts you all off. So it seemed like it might be a sort of a game where it would have been more interesting if it were a cooperative game where you're all working to try and get to a certain amount of influence before the king cuts you off or something like that, if, like before time runs out, instead of working to individually, selfishly trying to spread the most influence yourself, because you're really all, you're all trying to do the same thing basically.
Right.
Just,
I've read some people online who just outright didn't like that Jaffee and the people involved in making this game chose the Crusades as a theme. That there are some people who believe that certain things just shouldn't be made into a game or entertainment and stuff like that. And I can see where they're coming from. The Crusades is a controversial subject, but I almost feel like the game would have been more exciting if the game took a more realistic slant or take on the Crusades. Sure, it would have been more controversial that way, but I think it would have told the game through the gameplay matched with a more realistic theme. It would have told a more satisfying story for the player
Yeah.
Maybe there could be like meaningful moments between the players where you learn the lessons of crusading, and not just have like an abstract take on crusading where you're just sort of making it seem kind of fun, which is like the opposite of how it should be.
There is the note from the designer, Seth Jaffee, in the beginning of the rulebook here, sort of explaining some of these things about how it's not a game about the Crusades, but on, the Knights Templar, and, how it's not supposed to be like a deep dive into history. He actually recommends like I think a book here if you're interested in like learning more about the era and the people involved. But yeah.
I mean, that's all well and good, but how many people actually just want to play that game? Then?
I'm not gonna like get on anyone for not wanting to play this game because of what it's about, personally. Like, I get it. Like, I don't, like, even for me personally, this is not like the sort of thing that I find particularly appealing. Like, okay, I'm gonna go spread the gospel across Europe. Like, that's all right, I guess. But
yeah,
it doesn't offend me personally. But I don't blame the people who are turned off by it.
I'm not gonna. Yeah, once again, I guess maybe I fall into the same. It doesn't offend me. I'm not gonna be offended by this game. There's plenty of other games we've played that could offend someone based on their theme. I mean, think about Letters from Whitechapel. That's making light of a pretty serious situation. So there's plenty of other games that do it. So I'm not gonna get on him for designing this game and hit the theme.
But I appreciate the Letters from Whitechapel's like, here's the actual history, and now you're playing it, and it's entertaining.
Yeah. That being said, we have talked about the theme. Now, the components to sort of deliver on the theme are I think, quite good, generally. Thick cardboard. Always love thick cardboard, and there's tons of it in this game all over the place. The colors I like. They're kind of vibrant in a way you might not expect from a game like this, and they're
they pop.
All the pieces are very attractive, I think, related to the player components again.
Yeah.
Because stuff that goes on the board, less exciting. Lots of tiny little pieces that you have to keep track of. Easy to lose these, if I had to guess.
Adam P. McIver did the artwork.
He did.
We've played some of his games.
Bottom of the ninth.
And what's it? The library game. Why can't I see it? Ex Libris. Yeah, he designed and did the art thing. He's really good. I mean, my favorite artwork are the knights on the Knight Order tiles.
Well, that's kind of the only artwork.
That's not true. There's some slight on like
there's little bits of
but that artwork's incredible.
Yeah, there's not a whole ton of it.
Well, there's not a lot of it. It's really
but the components are pretty high quality. Definitely the setup and cleanup though especially with this stuff is kind of a pain. It's the sort of thing that's like not by itself necessarily a problem. Like in a game where like having long setup and cleanup, like it's not fun, but it's not the sort of thing that I would necessarily like dock a game for. But this game in particular, it's kind of irritating because not only is it, a relatively quick game to play, but it's also, it seems to me like a game that would be really good as like a sort of like a gateway game towards like heavier like strategy Euro games for people who maybe aren't familiar with it. Yeah, like you play this to prepare people for playing like Trajan or something, a game that's very similar but a lot weightier. Yeah. Exactly. So, like, I think, it's the sort of thing where you might, like, okay, yes, this is good. It's simple, it's straightforward, but it's also, it's got an element of strategy to it. But then you set people down to actually play it for the first time in between setting it up for 15 minutes and going over the rules. Their eyes are probably going to be glazed over by the time you actually get to playing, and that's kind of disappointing. Final thoughts here. I think this is a really solid game, I think. It's just a couple of tweaks away from being, like, a much better game, personally. Yeah. So I like it. I don't love it. I'm going to give it 3.5 stars out of 5. That is my system.
So I don't see anything that I really dislike about this game.
Yeah, it's not like a game like, I don't like that. But.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm gonna, the setting up and taking down doesn't bother me that much. I think Dee's a little bit impatient.
Some people are. It's good that people that are impatient know these things.
Anyway, so I give it one thumb up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm with you guys. I think it's a good, or not even good. It's a solid game. It's a solid gameplay experience. I don't. I think I have some level of knowledge of the Crusades. I mean, I'm a history guy, and I don't know. Maybe I think my expectations were too high for the game, but I respect what he was trying to do. So I'm going to give it a B-.
I do want to add one more quick thing that I forgot at the end of the rulebook here. He has some design notes that I appreciate. It's not something everyone does. Actually, I don't see it too often in rulebooks, but just getting some perspective from the designer on why certain things are there or aren't there. Like here's the thing about the upgrade mechanic you talked about earlier, Will, about why he included that as opposed to not including it. Interesting. I like that. that's our review for Crusaders. They Will Be Done. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any thoughts of your own in this game, or just us in general, please leave a comment below. You can, of course, also subscribe to our channel if you've not done so yet. Give us a thumb up if you enjoyed it. We always like to see those. And share it if you want with your friends on, social media or something, and get more eyes on us. We always appreciate new viewers. Each and every one of you. Except for Graham. Because,
Let's be real, he doesn't watch
stuff. I prefer other channels.
Anyway, of course, also check out our social media links, our Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Our MySpace, our Zynga, all down there. Come back this Friday, of course, for our next
battle, I guess you could say.
Yeah, our next battle of the wits.
Yeah.
Okay, well, good stuff. Thank you. Until then, bye.
All that matters is that D lost, right?
Yeah.
I'm the only one who played by the rules. But I should be the winner.
See ya!